At Charity Charge, our mission is to power yours. Most banks and financial service providers weren't built for nonprofits. They don't understand your structure or how you operate. That's why we exist. We proudly serve more than 3,000 organizations across the US, offering tools built exclusively for the sector. From credit cards and expense management to bookkeeping and gift cards, every solution is designed to help you minimize operations and supercharge your impact. And we're more than just financial services. We're an educational community. We share resources every day on our podcast, blog, and webinars to help you stay informed, compliant, and empowered. Visit charitycharge.com to learn more and join the community. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Nonprofit Spotlight series. Today, we are absolutely pleased to be joined by Jonathan Van Horn. He is the Executive Director of Pro Soccer for Athletes in Action. And Jonathan, just really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Grayson, absolutely a privilege and honor to be here today and to share a little bit of our story and what we're all about. So thank you.
Yeah, well, Athletes in Action. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that means?
Yeah.
What that the name of the organization kind of comes from, and some of the work that y'all are doing across the U.S.
Yeah, for sure. So we've been around since 1960. Mainly started off with working with university athletes, and it's sprung in from when obviously university athletes, they grow, they go into the business world, but often there's that 1% that go and play professionally. So that's been sort of the main focus is those around sports, university athletes, pro athletes, and then coaches. Fast forward to today, we have roughly full-time employees on over 300 universities in the U.S. In addition to that, we're over 75 countries around the world working with athletes and coaches and those that are influenced by sport.
I love that. And well, tell me a little bit more about what the need is, right? Because the athlete is a really challenging, position to hold within the university structure. A lot of stuff to balance. So, what is the need that you're seeing that y'all's organizations help filling?
Yeah, what's interesting is that in the last probably decade or so, you've seen a lot around the idea of mental health. And so, as a faith-based organization, we believe that our faith in God has a significant impact on how we just engage as humans, but also engage in sport. And so as Athletes in Action, we come alongside athletes and coaches, and specifically in those mental performance spaces, as well as just mental health areas, on what it means to flourish. How do we be successful as humans and be successful in sports? How do we flourish and be who God has called and created us to be? And so as Athletes in Action, we come alongside and really go after what we call the total athlete, this holistic approach to the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, and the physical aspect of us as humans. Most of our staff are volunteers in their respective environments. And so we come alongside as a free resource for athletes and coaches, allowing the space for athletes to be encouraged, to be lifted up, but also, again, providing a resource for them to be able to grow and to flourish. And what we do as staff is that we intentionally build through one-on-one engagements, through working with teams, do team workshops, as well as small group Bible studies, or just intentionally engaging in those spaces with athletes. And then also it creates a space where universities, not all institutions are super excited about faith or people of faith. And so that's been create space and allow us to be able to step in an environment where the university doesn't have to pay us. There's no strings attached, and also creates a space for trust for the athletes that we're not employed by the university or by the pro teams. Allows, hey, we're not here to tell on you or to tell what's going on, but actually create a really safe place for athletes to be honest and to be open about what they're navigating, celebrating the successes, as well as just navigating some of the struggles and difficulties that they may be experiencing as athletes, the pressure, the tensions, the difficulties, navigating not only in the sport, but also just through social media and other environments.
I love that. And that it's that complete athlete piece that you spoke to, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Because the responsibility of the coach, right, is that athlete piece. And how do you ensure that all the other extra, terrain stuff is kind of taken care of? I love that. And something that's so unique, it sounds like, is how volunteer forward you are, in the sense of that these are people that are in, roles and positions within, different organizations, but kind of almost ambassadors of Athletes in Action and the work that they do. How is managing that?
Yeah, so when we first started within pro soccer, when Major League Soccer, it's the top division in the U.S., began back in '96, this guy's name is Jim, and Jim had his vision of how do we reach the entire sport, how do we reach the entire league, what does that look like? And we recognized early on that we couldn't do it as one entity, one organization. And so we began to build a network of individuals, mainly around volunteers. We realized that it's easier and it's more resourceful to find someone that's willing to volunteer 5 to 10 hours a week to build into athletes, rather than trying to hire or employ or do fundraising for people all over the country. And so that's what that was our strategy early on. And we still have, like on my team right now, I have 17 they're full time with Athletes in Action. And in addition to that, we have over 35 volunteers across the US and Canada that are ministering directly with pro clubs. And so we've just seen a significant impact through multiplication of through the volunteers, and that's been a significant thing. And volunteers, that's sort of the blessing and the curse of volunteers is you can't lead by hiring, firing, or using money as a motivator. They're motivated through inspiration. They're motivated through impact. They're motivated through legacy, and that's been a lot of as we continue to cast vision and onboard and bring new volunteers in, as well as retain the volunteers we have. Is creating an environment where they're like, I can't wait to go to the training facility. I can't wait to get to campus. I can't wait to step into a stadium. Because of the opportunity they have to build and invest in someone's life and have a significant impact, not only in this moment, but also for eternity. And so that intentionality of an inspiration, intentionality of really the motivation that is beyond other resource that maybe a company that hires and fires someone has access to.
Really appreciate that answer. And looking back at yourself as you've grown this volunteer base, you've been
Mhm.
at the organization, I think over 18 years.
Yeah,
Looking
over 20 now. It's
over
crazy.
20.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing. Well, as you look back, what's something that you think, I can't believe I was doing it in that way? What's like a lesson maybe that you've learned in terms of motivation with these volunteers and getting them bought into the mission that's been really impactful
Yeah.
to your role?
Yeah, absolutely. So early on, one of the things that is we're like remote all over the U.S. and Canada, and so early on, I was really firm in relationships. Is that it's hard to develop a relationship through a screen. It's hard to develop relationships over a phone or a text message thread. And so we just were intentional with building physical connection. And so traveling to the location. So whether it's you fly into like in Austin, Texas, we have staff in Austin or volunteers in Austin, Dallas, and San Antonio. So you fly into Austin, spend 3 days hitting all three cities and getting time and saying, "Hey, I see you. I see what drives you. I see what you're excited about, what you're passionate about. I know your family, and you're a part of something that's bigger than yourself. Like it's not just one chaplain in Austin or Dallas or Seattle, but you're actually part of a collective, a network of chaplains that are doing the exact same thing. That you can share best practices. You can be encouraged. Hey, I'm having a problem here. Has anyone experienced this before? What's that look like? And so that shared knowledge and shared experience is significant as well. Again, that sense of belonging. And so we've just been intentionally from a leadership standpoint, and again, stumbled upon it. I was like, I think this should work. You don't know until you try, right? And so just testing it out and building relationships. And there's volunteers there's been a longevity. Some of the volunteers have been working with us for decades.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is because of the intentionality around relationship.
I look at that and I see how difficult of a challenge it would be to scale, right? As a
Yes.
leadership team, how have you balanced that need that y'all have identified, right? Where
Hmm.
that increases longevity and increases volunteer engagement, gets them bought in and mission aligned. That need to have that physical presence with that scaling that obviously has been able to take place. What went into
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Great question. It's, we comment sort of a double fold. And so recognizing is that if it's all based on me, it creates a bottleneck. If I'm the only one that has a relationship with our volunteer base specifically, and everything begins and ends with me, then that's a problem because I have 24 hours in the day, limited time, I have a family, all the other things. I would be on the road all the time. So what we did is we created an annual experience where people could come in together, be in person, training. And for our volunteers, we're like, if you can get here, we'll cover everything else. So you get here, fly in, drive in, whatever it may be, we'll cover your hotel, cover your food, cover the resources and the training, or whatever that looks like. We'll take care of that. And then in addition to that is we empower other people. So there's other that are full time and some of the other volunteers as well. Is like, hey, what would it look like for you to travel? Go meet the team when they're on the road and connect to the chaplain that's in that city. What would it look like? Same thing for someone else. So we had one of our chaplains in Indianapolis. He started working with a couple teams in Colorado, and so he would fly into Denver and connect with a couple of chaplains in Colorado Springs, Fort Collins in that area and stuff like that. And so just an intentionality of, hey, if we can empower other people within the team that are full time or have the capacity and desire to build into other chaplains, let's really take advantage of that and empower those other volunteers, those other full time staff to be able to do that. And so it's creating a multiplication effect and recognizing that, like, I just sometimes I'll get a text, hey, had a great time with Sean and with Chris, great time connecting with those guys. And I'm like, I had no idea you were going there. That's amazing. And so those
Yeah.
are some of those fun stories that you get to hear, that there's relational connection, depth of relationship, shared resource, shared connection, shared best practices. And I'm not even in the middle of it, which is, again, that's what's allowed us to have that longevity.
I love that, and I'd like to take a kind of step back, right? We spoke a little bit to the fact you've been at the organization for 20 years, and your experience also includes the people that you serve, right? The players and the
Hmm.
coaches.
Yeah.
So you have that experience, as an athlete and a coach yourself. Can you speak a little bit more to that and how that perspective, maybe especially initially, really helped shape the leadership that you have been doing.
Yeah, so when you have influence in your spaces of influence, oftentimes there can be a sense of isolation or feeling like you're alone. And so it's because it's not everyone, like I said, 1% of athletes that play in university go on to play professionally, and the ones that have a remotely average, decent career are 1% of the 1%. And so you're talking with these coaches and these athletes that are at the elite of what they do, and oftentimes you can feel isolated. And so the intentionality of having that experience myself of playing at a higher level, I didn't play professionally, but played at a high level in university, and feeling some of that, feeling that angst and that discouragement of, hey, who else can actually talk to about this? And now that we get to having that experience as an athlete, and then also transitioning after playing at a high level to my vocation now, there's just an identity loss that occurs. And so the intentionality of having that experience, now going back, go, oh, I know what it's like to be in your shoes. I've been there. I've felt the isolation. I've felt the loneliness. And so we're able to create a place of safety, create a place of community for athletes and coaches that is needed. And then oftentimes isn't known. They don't know that they need it until they experience it and go, I needed this. I'm grateful for this experience, grateful for the fact that you're in my life, that you're in these spaces with me, you're in the trenches, if you will, having this shared experience, but also you're someone that I can have a conversation with and bounce ideas back and forth with, or just things that I'm thinking and processing through, and having that environment where it is safe and it's trusted, and there's an intentionality to that.
I think something that you mentioned that's so important, that spoke to me is this aspect of the identity, right? That's tied into it. My identity as an athlete, and how that also can change, right? In the sense of like maybe you're not in the 1% that's going to be going on to professional sports. Important is it, in your relationship and in that conversation where you're able to build up these people that you work with to realize, I'm more than just an athlete, right? And that there is more that I can do beyond just that. And how instrumental is that to y'all's work? It must be.
Yeah, it's significant. As when you think about when you're really good at something, especially when you're younger, it becomes a part of who you are. And that's just,
Of
and
course,
so
naturally.
your identity, yeah, naturally, it's your identity becomes to be associated with, whether it's art or music or sport, even people that are like naturally entrepreneurs and have a, business acumen, it sort of just comes naturally. That persona you begin to take on as part of who you are in yourself. And the reality is that to play sport is eventually going to come to an end. And there's oftentimes an athlete's 28, 30, 32 years old, and they're done playing, and they're like, well, I don't know who I am now. And they still have so much of their life ahead of them.
Yeah.
But there's a sense of grieving. There's an old adage that says athletes die twice. Once when they stop playing, and then that one, and second time is when they actually physically die. And it's true. And so because of this reality of who they are is tied up to their sport and their performance and how well they're playing, how well they're not playing, all those type of things. And so being able to speak into that, one of the main things we talk about is that the core essence of who we are as humans, our identity, it has to be anchored in something that can't be taken away. And so when we recognize that reality, that especially from a faith standpoint, is that who I am and how I created in God's image and having a relationship with Him, that's not something that can be taken away from me. That's something that's fixed. It's continuing not only in this present, but also for all eternity. And when I anchor myself in that, even when other things change, there's still a significance there. I still believe that from a part of our identity is in sport. Like as an athlete, I still see myself as an athlete. I'm no longer playing. I've had multiple surgeries. If I can wake up and walk and without pain in a day, I'm happy. But I'm still an athlete. It's part of who I am. It's part of my story. It's part of my narrative. Part of what has shaped me as a human is sport. And so, and from my belief and perspective is that that's okay. The caveat is that at the core essence of who I am, the heart of who I am, is not my sport, is not my performance, but it's my relationship with God. And so that is something that's been intentional. So we have that conversation with the athletes, and it frees them up oftentimes in the midst of the good and the bad and the ugly moments of sport to go, okay, this will pass, and that's okay. And I know that I'm created for something greater as well in what's to come, because I'm anchored in something that in my faith that can't be taken away, regardless of what happens around me.
That's incredible. I really appreciate you sharing how it personally shapes you as well.
Hmm.
Something that came to my mind too. I'm sure it also really enables you to move past mistakes, right? Because
Yeah,
it keeps you really grounded in that way, right? It's like short
yeah,
memory in that way too.
that's right. Well, and it creates that if you're not failing, you're not growing. As an adage, one of the things that I love to say to athletes, and they don't always appreciate it. It says, "He or she that fails the most wins," and they're like, "I don't know if I like that." But the reality is that in order to grow, you have to fail. That's you think about whether it's in speaking or a sport or anything is that you have to, in order to
Yeah.
get better at something, to excel at something, you have to fail at it first. And so it's that pursuit of excellence, the intentionality of excellence is wrapped in failure. And so having that perspective is allows people to see failure as a data point or just data that you can process and work through rather than a defining moment.
Of course, on that note, what are some lessons that y'all have taken from some of the maybe failures that you've had at Athletes in Action this year?
Oh yeah. So one of the things is that one of the things our volunteer base they're awesome, but also volunteers because they said you can't hire and fire. One of the things we've learned is that we've placed a couple of volunteers this past year that looking back there were some yellow flags of like either they weren't fully committed, they weren't really on board. It was more for a personal gain. And you're like, oh man, like looking back, I'm like I should have seen that, I noticed that, but had a little tug on your heart going, something's not right here. But yeah, it's like, oh man, okay. So you learn from that and you recognize, restore relationships. So whenever there's a mistake or a failure, one of the questions we ask is how has this affected the trust in our relationship, and what can I do to restore that trust? Because trust is significant.
Fundamental to everything we do.
Yeah, and so as a result of that, we're we've been really quick to when we do make mistakes, or we have like so with the volunteer and some other spaces, we've just been really quick to restore the trust, and sometimes it's able to be restored, and we've also had a couple of experiences where with clubs that one of the clubs is they're like, yeah, we don't want a chaplain here anymore, and you're like, okay, lesson learned. It's a tough one to go, man. I just that yeah, it stinks, but that's the reality is that we made a mistake, and we have to own that and learn from it, but also recognizes that you're looking for opportunities then to rebuild the trust if possible, and if it's not possible, then there's two people that have made that decision, and you have to live with that and go on.
Yeah. Well, and again, on that note, what does 2026 look like for Athletes in Action? What's got you
Yeah.
excited, and how can our community get involved?
Yeah, obviously the greatest, in my perspective, is the greatest world event there is the World Cup, and it's coming to the U.S. and Canada and Mexico are all hosting, and we are just athletes. Actually, we're super excited about what has in store. One of the things we're talking about is called Victory Beyond the Cup. The website is victorybeyondthecup.com, and it's an initiative where we're looking to mobilize 10,000 churches and 100,000 individuals across the U.S., Mexico, and Canada to use as a way to have an impact, have an eternal impact, and it's really seeing people that are influenced by the sport, more importantly, look and turn to God and trust Him with their lives. And so that's something that's massive on the forefront. We have multiple cities that are hosting events where we have churches that have already partnered with us that have been testing some concepts, some new ideas. We have material and content, for lack of a better word, is host an event in a box. And so churches and individuals will get a box of supplies to be able to, with digital content and other resourcing, to be able to host an event, to use that as a way to influence their communities, have an impact in the spaces that they've been entrusted to, as well as continue to transform where they've been placed.
That and how can our community get involved?
Yeah, how you can get involved, you said victorybeyondthecup.com is an easy way to sign up. Just drop your email in and connect, and you'll be able to get connected. One of our representatives will be contacting you and what next steps look like.
Exciting year ahead.
Yes, very much so.
Jonathan, thanks so much for coming on and sharing more about the mission, the impact, some of the lessons learned.
Absolutely. Great. Absolutely, Grayson. It's so much fun. And thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about what's in our world right now.